So wanted to provide a bit of an update on dashboards and at the same time discuss some of the new features and functionality that's been added to RFSuite to support dashboards, just so that things are clear for people for when they're looking to test this. So just a reminder, this still isn't in release. It's still actively being developed by myself and Rob. Massive shout out to Rob, by the way, who's pumped hours and hours and hours into RFSuite as a whole, and also the dashboard system. We've pretty much got it now to a place where it's quite stable. So we're looking for, if people are interested, to take a look at it and test it and use it and provide feedback via raising a problem on GitHub. That would be awesome. So what I'll do is I'll sort of explain how to get up and running with it, some of the, I guess, the features and how to configure them, and then basically give you guys a bit of an overview of the whole dashboard system itself. So start off with, if you want to start using the new dashboard system, you need to go to the RFSuite GitHub site, and on the main page, if you click on code up the top here, there's a code button here. You can download the zip. So when you download the zip, it will contain the latest version of RFSuite as of the moment you download it. So just keep in mind, it is being updated quite frequently, pretty much still daily. But the things that are going on at the moment are minor bug fixes, I would say, more so than any huge fundamental changes to the product. So once you download it, if you open the file, within the downloaded file, there under the scripts directory, you don't need to worry about any of this other stuff. Under the scripts directory, there's an RFSuite folder. You need to copy that to your radio's scripts directory. If you have RFSuite already, I would strongly suggest, well, I 100% suggest, make sure you delete the current copy of RFSuite before you copy this new version over onto your radio's storage drive. And then once that's done, I'll basically walk you through it in the sim because it looks a bit cleaner to show you guys, as opposed to if I was to do it on my radio. So I'll show you on the sim, which is essentially exactly the same as doing it on your radio. So you'd basically turn your radio on once you've already be on because you've copied those files across. But once it's set up, you'd have whatever screen for that particular model that you're connected to set up on your main screen here. What you'll want to do is click on display and then change this layout so what you'll probably want to do first is just remove any existing widgets that you have set up on your screen, because we're going to change this whole layout. What you want to do is click on screen one up here and then change layout. And then what you want to pick is the full screen option. So you click on that and then click on change down here, and you'll see, once you've got that new RFSuite on your radio, you'll see a Rotoflight dashboard option. So click on that, and that's basically that. And then we'll just quit back out. And then what will happen is, now at the moment, this will connect. So what I will do is I will just turn it off for now. So I'll just turn telemetry off on this particular model for now.
Sensor lost.
So what I will show you guys is that now with Suite, you can actually configure certain things without even having a model connected, whereas previously RFSuite wouldn't even launch unless you had a model connected. So now so I've simulated that. So basically I don't have a model connected at the moment. So if you go into Rotoflight, you'll see now all the options are grayed out. There's also been some menu changes, which I'll cover off shortly as well. Things have been consolidated down into like a nested menu structure to keep things a bit easier to navigate. So all of the stuff relating to RFSuite dashboards is under settings. So if you click on settings, there's a bunch of options here. So I'll just walk through them. So there's the general option, which with this one, you can actually sync your craft name to your model name on your radio up the top here. So whatever craft name you have set in Rotoflight, you can sync that up to your model up the top there. I typically do that. So you turn that on and click save. You need to make sure with all of this stuff that if you change anything in settings that you do click save so that it takes hold. We've sort of done that as a protection against accidentally changing something, going back and then not realizing that what you'd done caused it to change. So once you've made your changes, you press save, and that'll make sure it writes those settings back and retains them. So I'll just go back a level. And then the next one is the dashboard system. So this is where you'll come in and you'll have theme, and this is where you will pick the particular theme that you would like to run in each of the 3 flight modes that there's a dashboard theme available for. So there's a pre-flight, an in-flight, and a post-flight, which basically, as they're worded, your pre-flight theme is the first theme that you see when you connect the model. When you then spool up and transition to in-flight, it will dynamically change to the in-flight theme that you have selected. And then once you motor off your heli and disarm or whatever, it will then flip to the post-flight theme. So at the moment, we've got a few different options here that you can choose from. For this demo, I'll show you my themes. So I have a AERC and an AERC Nitro. The Nitro is specific to Nitro. The AERC is specific to electric, and the same goes for Rob's themes that he's got there. So I'll just pick my theme. Now you can chop and change, so you could actually have my pre-flight, Rob's in-flight, and then the default post-flight if you wanted. It's purely up to you. Again, for the demo, I'll just use my themes. So whilst we're here, there is another option available for people. So if you're one of the people that run a single model on your radio for multiple helis, for example, we do actually have an optional theme. So for example, if you had a couple of electrics and a nitro that you run on a single model on your radio, I don't have telemetry on right now. I will quickly turn it on just so that I can show you guys. So if you were to go in here, you'll actually see you can pick, once the model's connected, so this will be grayed out if you don't have a model connected at the time you come into this, but if you have a model connected, you can actually have model specific themes for your different models. So if, for example, like I said, you have a single model on your radio, but you also fly a nitro heli on that particular single model, you can pick a nitro theme for that model. And what will happen is that all your other helis will use your default ones above, and then your nitro heli, because you've connected it and told it that you want a specific theme for that model, will actually have the nitro theme. So for now, I'll just turn it off because for the demo, I'm not going to show that. I will turn telemetry off as well. I'll just save that. And this will show you as well that this will grey out if a model's not connected. So I'll simulate that now, and you can see those options have been grayed out because there's no model connected. And that's because it is a model specific setting.
Sensor loss.
Cool. So ignoring the sensor loss, it's just because I've turned telemetry off for this model. Next thing, that's pretty much what I'm showing you now are just general settings that you can configure at any time without a model. So just walking through those as well, we have localization. So what this localization does is it changes all of your display within RFSuite to use that particular unit, whether that be for temperature or altitude. So for those of you guys in America, you would change that to Fahrenheit if that's what your preferred display value or display unit. And then again, if you would prefer feet for your altitude, you can change that here. Being in Australia, I'll keep that as it is for now, but yeah, you can change that. Just a note on that as well. It works best if you just leave your actual telemetry sensor itself configured to the default, which is within Rotoflight is Celsius, and with altitude is meters. So we do all the calculations within RFSuite for that. So you don't need to change anything on the actual telemetry sensor. Just come in here and pick whichever your preferred unit is, and RFSuite will do the conversions for you and will display the correct unit for you. The next thing to cover off is audio. So we have got new audio events now that we've added. So Under events, these are essentially the audio alerts that RFSuite will trigger based on your preferences. So it will tell you if you're armed, disarmed. It will update you on your governor state as it transitions through the various states. Personally, I have these off. Voltage is if you don't have a consumption sensor or the appropriate sensors available to fly to capacity and need to fly to voltage, you'd want to have this on. So that will alert you to your voltage levels of your battery. Again, I have all of that stuff on my heli, so I'll turn this off. And then PID rates, I typically just have it call out my rates. We've got some new options. So there's now ESC temperature. So you turn this on, and this value is based on whatever localization value you set. So if you were to set it at to Fahrenheit, you'd want to adjust this accordingly. Again, I'm Celsius, so I'm happy with a threshold of 90. If you want it to notify you when the ESC temp is higher than a lower value, you can absolutely adjust that down to whatever or up as well to whatever your desired alert level is. And what will happen is if you have your heli connected and the ESC temp is above this value, it will actually notify you and say that there's an ESC temperature warning. It's a good indication that there's obviously an issue with your ESC. Same goes for BEC voltage. So we've now got BEC voltage alerting. This is only in flight, so your BEC voltage will never trigger any alerts when you're just connect your heli or after you disconnect your heli, or if you have it plugged in via USB to a machine or whatever. It will only trigger when your heli is in flight and if the value for your BEC voltage drops below this value. So it's a good way to, I guess, monitor, and if your BEC is maybe dropping a little bit in flight and maybe that's representative of some issues there, or similarly if your BEC just was to die in flight, which you'd probably notice other things, not just your BEC voltage dropping, but it will notify you of that. My helis, I typically run 8 volts, so I usually set it a little bit below 8 volts, something like that. So at least if my BEC voltage was to drop below that value when I'm in flight, I'll be notified of that. The next thing, so we've now got fuel is now a lot smarter, I think is probably a good way to put it. So fuel is now based on MAR consumption of your battery, and we use that to track how much battery you have remaining. I will cover off shortly some of the other settings associated with this, but this is just the audio part of it. So you can choose to have, by default, it will tell you when your fuel level is at 10%, and then once you get 0%, it will also tell you again that you've got 0% fuel. And then you can configure it so that when it gets to 0%, it will repeat that every 10 seconds, however many times you would like that to be. So this is all personal preference. I usually have mine just alert me twice because I hope by that point I know it's a good time to land, but you can have that to whatever value you would like. The call out percentage, as I mentioned, so the default is it will only call out your fuel once you hit 10% left. But there are other options. You can have it call it out every 10%, so it'll call it out at 100%, 90, 80, 70, etc. Or you could do every 20% if you wanted, so it'll do 100, 80, 60, 25, and 50. So there's different options, whatever works for you guys. You can pick the appropriate option there. Personally, I use 10%. Every 10%, it'll call out and tell me. Just so I can keep track as I'm flying how much battery I've got left, but everyone's different. So the options are there. You can pick, or you can have it turned off entirely if you don't even want to know about it. That's totally fine too. So I've changed those to what I would use. I'll just save that. And then going back, we also have now a timer available within Rotaflight. So you don't need to configure a timer on your radio within your model. You can actually just configure that based on your model and then set up alerting based on that. So this is the audio side. So if you want the timer to actually alert, if you want to fly with fuel calling out as well as timer, which I personally do, some people would just like fuel, whatever. If you turn it on by default, once your timer runs out, it will beep at you to notify that the timer's out. There are other options though. You can have it beep. It's 3 beeps. This is the multi-beep, so it'll beep 3 times to notify your timer's elapsed. You can have it tell you timer elapsed, or you can have it say timer and then however many seconds you set your timer for, it will play that. So it'll say timer 200 seconds, for example. So you can pick whichever option. I use timer elapsed. We do have some extra options as well. So if you want it to start notifying you prior to the timer actually elapsing, you can turn this on as well. You can set it to start alerting you 60 seconds before your timer runs out, 90 seconds before, 30 seconds before. You pick that, and then you pick the interval. So if you were to pick this option, which is the default option, is 30 seconds before your timer runs out, it will beep every 10 seconds leading up to that, and then it'll play the elapsed, whatever elapsed audio alert you have configured once the timer elapsed. Similarly, you can have it keep doing the same thing post timer as well. So if you want a post period, you can configure that. Personally, I don't use them, but they are there if people would like to use them. So I figured I'd just cover that off for you guys. So there's that. Then that's pretty much it. The switches is the same as it used to be in Suite, so you can actually assign switches on your radio to call out these telemetry values from your model, if that's what you want to do. For those who have a gyro, for example, in their FrSky transmitter, you can actually set it to trigger off tilting your radio to the left and right as well, to call out the associated telemetry values. So that option's there as well if you want to use that. So that pretty much covers the when a model's not connected, what you can do. And then if I was to now enable this, and this is just simulating connecting my model. So now you see all the other options have come up. And as I explained before, these options are now nested. So all the previous options are all still there. We've just cleaned up the main page a bit. Then under, so going back to the fuel stuff. So given that we've now introduced some smarts around fuel, configuring your battery settings within RotorFlight is now a lot more important. Now you can do this in RotorFlight Configurator, or you can do this in Suite. So with your model connected to the transmitter or to the configurator, the battery options are now quite important. So what you want to ensure now, I'll caveat all this now, is that battery profiles are coming to a later version of RotorFlight, well, 2.3. They'll be available in that, at which point a lot of this will become easier to support if you fly the same heli with a different pack capacity. For now, we don't have that, but for now you can fly a particular capacity type, or like a single type of capacity on a model without issues. It's just be mindful that at the moment, pre 2.3, we don't have the capacity to support battery profiles. So you'll need to just keep that in mind when you're doing your settings for your battery. So going back to it, you've got to configure your max cell voltage, which would be if you run a standard LiPo 4.2 volts, or if you run a HV LiPo, you'd set it 4.35 or whatever's suitable. And then you want to set your full cell voltage. Now, by default, 4.1 volts is a good value. What that means is if when you connect your battery to your heli, if the battery returns a per cell voltage greater than or equal to or greater than 4.10 volts, it will then return to you telling you that your fuel is 100%, which will indicate that you've got a fully charged battery connected. Now, if you were to connect a battery that is below this value that you've set, it will then calculate an estimated return amount of fuel for you based on basically based on some mass that we've put into the system. It will give you a very conservative value. So whilst you may say, oh, that's a bit lower than I was expecting, we've done that for safety reasons. We didn't want to calculate a value that was above what, or basically close to what we would expect you to have left. We wanted to keep this safe so that you can safely then fly to 0% fuel without worrying about over discharging your battery. So that's just an important one to take note of. You don't have to worry too much about adjusting the worn cell or the min cell voltage. You can leave those as default. Just make sure that they're similar to these values, ideally, and not beyond what a realistic voltage is for your particular battery. Then you want to configure the cell count of the battery you got connected. And then we now have consumption warning percentage. So by default at the moment, Rotoflight's configured to have this value as 10%. There'll be some changes to the default coming in future releases of Rotoflight. So what 10% would mean is that you would fly your battery down to only having 10% capacity left, which I wouldn't recommend. I would recommend setting this value around 35 to 40%. That way you account for your mark consumption of your ESC potentially being slightly out. Now I know you can do consumption correction in Rotoflight to help with that. I would still strongly suggest you have a value of around 30 to 40%, which will land you at or about 30 to 40% battery remaining on your pack, so you won't over discharge your pack. And what that will then do is your fuel percentage value in the dashboard system will actually say 0%, but you're not actually totally out of battery. You will still have whatever you've configured this value as left in your battery. So this is our way of saying you can now safely fly to 0% without worrying about over discharging your battery. And you can tweak this value so that you land your pack at what you would consider your safe point of discharging your pack to. If you're the kind that, you know, drains it down to like 20-15% and then returns their pack to storage charge when they store them, sweet, you can configure it that way. I personally fly to 30-40% and don't really worry about putting my batteries on storage charge because I just fly them down to that capacity and I'm okay to leave that. It's up to you how you configure it. Just so you know, that is how it behaves. So this value is important, and it's important to make sure you do this for each heli that you fly with the dashboard system, so that you know that when you fly to 0%, you've still got this value left. And as I said, at the moment, that is 10% by default. So every heli you connect and use the dashboard system and fly to 0% fuel, make sure you've got this consumption warning percent set at 30 or even more. Like I said, I usually actually run 35-40. Have it set at an appropriate value. The other thing we've got now is, as I was going back to the timer stuff earlier, so we have a flight time alarm. Ignore this value here. This is just because we're in the simulator. This will be 0 on your model unless you've already pre-configured it within Rotoflight, because there is an option via the CLI to add a model parameter for this. But what we've done is we've interfaced RFSuite into that so that you can modify that. So I would say for most of you, this will actually be 0. So this is where you set your timer. Now it is in seconds, so that's something to be mindful of. So you have to do some quick math on your appropriate flight timer. I usually fly 3 minutes 30 to 4 minutes. I usually set mine at about 220 seconds for that. So I'll just, for this example, I'll configure this that way. Okay, and then save that. All right, so that's basically that. So just wanted to stress the importance of making sure you have that correct and provide an explanation as to how that works. Now, I will show that in practice now. So returning back, so that's pretty much all the settings now. There are some other options as well I'll quickly touch on. So going back into settings under dashboard, we do have a settings section for the themes. So again, when the model's connected, this is model specific. You can tweak the display of the dashboard themes themselves. So for example, if you're running my theme, I have some configurable options here for head speed. So you can set your min and max head speed, which will then be represented in the graph that's in flight, which I'll show you. And similarly, your back voltage, I've got a very broad range here. You can then tailor this to your particular heli so that the graph is more representative of your back voltage. And similarly, ESC temp, you can set your warning and your max. That will update the graph and it'll also cause the colors to change. So when you hit warning level, it'll go orange. When you hit or exceed max, it'll turn red. So you can tweak these values to your preferences. And then again, sorry, just going back to the nitro, this is a good one as well. So depending on the LiPo you have connected or the receiver pack you have connected to your nitro heli, you can tweak these values so that they're representative of your min and max cell voltages of the pack you've got connected to power your receiver or the flybarless unit itself. Again, so that you've got a good idea as to how much flight time you've got left in that battery that you're using to power your servos and stuff. you can tweak these values and it will then update the appropriate displays in the dashboard itself. So going back to it, I will now go back to the dashboard itself. So this is my dashboard. This is now with the model connected. Pre-flight, so I've plugged it in. You can see I've got battery 100%. I will just relaunch it just to show you the process. So I've obviously made those audio changes, which will now take effect. So I'll be
Welcome
quite
to
pleased to
Ethos.
see that. So now it's connecting. It's getting all the telemetry info.
Disarmed rates 1.
So there's the disarmed and rates options I had on.
Fuel 100%.
And there's fuel 100%. So this is that new fuel value. 100% is actually 70%. Well, because I've got it configured at 30, is actually 70% of the pack. So yeah, that's basically that, and it's all tied into that audio stuff I was showing you. So now I'll show you if we were to now spool the heli up, which I'm just going to skip straight to Governor Active for this. The dashboard will change. So now this is the in-flight theme, and again, you can have whatever theme you want. This is the one I have, because this is the stuff that I felt people would want to see when they're flying. It's all nice and big, so if you quickly look down your screen, you can see how much fuel you've got left, your flight timer, where your throttle's at, where your RPMs are at, and where your ESC temp's at. Then once you then motor off, throttle hold, it will then flip to the post-flight screen.
Disarmed.
And then you get some summary information from your flight, which will remain on the screen after you disconnect telemetry as well. So you'll get your flight duration. We've got total model flight duration, min, max, RPMs, etc. It'll also tell you how much fuel you got left, how much capacity or like MAR you've consumed from your battery during that flight as well. So if you've got a 5,000 MAR pack, you can sort of see how much of that 5,000 milliamps you've consumed, and you'll get a per cell voltage and things like that as well. So that's the post-flight screen. So yeah, in a nutshell, I hope that gives you guys a bit of an insight into how you can get up and running with dashboards, some of the options that are available to you. I will stress again, this is still pre-release. We will be releasing it officially at some stage in the future, but for now it is pre-release. So if you do want to use it, do so at your own risk, but at the same time, please, if you do find any issues or have any concerns with anything, feel free to raise it on GitHub or to myself or Rob, so that we can look into that and look to get anything resolved. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. I will actually just cover one more thing, just so that you guys are aware of some other changes that have happened within Suite. So I don't have my radio connected at the moment, so I'll just quickly show you, which in the sim it's the same story. So this is a simulated SD card or internal memory of the radio. So this would be your radio's memory drive. Under the scripts folder, there's now a new RFSuite user folder. This is where we now store all of the preferences and all of the settings that you configure in Suite are now stored in here. So what that means is whenever you upgrade RFSuite to the latest version, don't delete this folder because it keeps all your settings. It's just the RFSuite folder that you'll need to update. All of your settings that you've configured, your theme settings, your audio settings will all then remain because they're now stored and kept within this folder. So you don't need to worry about anything in here. This is just where we keep all the user config stuff so that you guys can update to the latest version without losing all your user preferences. So just wanted to make sure I cover that off so that people are aware. But otherwise, yeah, I think I've rambled on long enough. So yeah, hopefully that gives you guys a bit of an overview of the new dashboard system in Suite and some of the new functionality and things that have happened with it. So yeah, enjoy guys. Thank you.